4. Gather around, freaks. We are slashing our way through the Christmas season. We take a trip to a Canadian sorority next. So gather around the internet radio and gather around the internet telephone because the call is coming from inside the house on this week's episode of Hey, Did You See This One? Hello and welcome to Hey, Did You See This One? The episode 211. It's the weekly reaction review roundtable discussion podcast where we just have to ask the question, hey, did you see this one? I realized that I forgot to put my hat on, put my Christmas sweater on, and turn my light on. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm Jason R. Phillips. Jason R. Phillips Christmas. Oh, shit. That's amazing.
Wow.
That's actually amazing. OSW is great. I'm going to go round some of those things up, and Steve's going to tell you what this movie is and what this show is. I'll be back in a sec.
Oh, hey, it's me, the other host of the show, Steve in Boba Blackfly Waters. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jason R. Christmas Phillips, or Jason R. Phillips Christmas. And this week we have back on the show, once again, our good friend, Ben Christmas. Welcome.
Very
Ben.
creative.
Welcome
Thank you so much.
Back to the show.
It's going to be an interesting one. I'm very curious to hear both of your opinions on this.
Well, we have you here often for horror, and this is a horror classic. I don't know if Jason had seen it before, but I didn't want to spoil that this is where that famous line comes from by telling him early.
I realized that as I was watching, I was like, this movie's from 1974. It must be this movie.
It was. But the movie we're doing this week is, of course, Black Christmas, a movie that is famous around the world, has no sequels to it, but has so many remakes, tons and tons of remakes. It's a movie from 1974. It's starring a whole bunch of familiar faces. I don't think it's set in Toronto, but it's definitely filmed in Toronto. If you're from Toronto, you'll recognize everything. The reason I don't think it's set in Toronto is because he has a big fat American flag on his desk the entire time, the police detective.
That's true, yeah.
But they do mention Scarborough and like a bunch of like local areas where they're like, let's just say what the actual areas are. Anyway, that's the show, the movie we're doing this week, and I'm excited to talk about it with my friends. You guys want to get right into the brief history of everything?
We have to do a synopsis.
Okay, let's do that first.
Yeah.
Zardos, are you there?
Zardos speaks to you. He demands you synopsize this film. Tell him how, why, who, what occurs in this film.
Thank you, Zardosso. I actually reached out to Ben, so we're going to be putting Ben up as sacrifice to Zardos this week for the brief synopsis.
That's fine. Not the first time, not the last time. It's a very simple film when you look at the actual like overlaying plot. It's when you get really deep into it where things get a little interesting. And really, if you're going to logline this movie, it's just a bunch of sorority sisters are terrorized by who they don't know is a killer. They just think is an obscene phone caller. But the twist being that the calls, as we now know, are coming from inside the house. One thing that I think they really could have relayed when advertising this film is how much deeper it actually goes with the characters. But when it comes to this film itself, what did you two think it was when you first started watching it?
Well, I've seen this movie before, so it's hard for me. It's kind of hard for me to remember the first time I saw it, but I definitely rewatched it early pandemic times when I was going through my huge horror stint. And it was murky. So I knew what the twist was, but I had forgotten about a lot of the sort of subtext that they're dealing with and the red herrings that are involved and the amount of characters that you're dealing with, all of whom potentially could be suspect besides the initial group of sorority sisters who are around for that initial phone call. Everybody else is potentially a murderer, which is the best way to make a slasher film, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, totally. I thought it was Peter the whole movie, hook, line, and sinker. But then there's parts where I'm like, how is he outside and inside the house at the same time? And they hadn't come up with two killers yet at this point, because this movie really reminded me a lot of Scream. Like, clearly Wes Craven was inspired by these old proto-slashers, as Ben put it to me. Like how this and Halloween definitely influenced a lot of horror. But I couldn't believe that this one was so like, it just had the same like vibe as Scream. It was interesting to me to see such an old movie. Kind of,
I think for me it was like I never suspected Peter until the very end, where I'm like, is it him though? Because like the whole movie, I'm like, they're really trying heavy-handedly to make you think it's him. So I'm like, it can't be him. It can't be the obvious person.
Like, why did they show him smashing a piano?
Because so he's weird. Upset about his unborn baby, Jason. Come on.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I'm a cold, heartless bastard.
He doesn't want
so many problems with that character.
He really wants a baby. But I mean, when he smashes that piano, I noticed this, which I hadn't noticed before. The musical cues after that sound like somebody rubbing like a fucking rock against the inside of a piano after that. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't notice this the first time I watched this movie, and now I like it more.
Interesting.
Anyway, which is also like, oh, maybe it is Peter because he's rubbing a rock inside the piano like an unborn baby.
And I'm sure we'll get to it later on, but I do have to say, the one thing that really moved me in this film was watching somebody know they are failing at something that means the world to them. Mm-hmm. Note by note. It's devastating. And then
to be fair, he's terrible at piano.
Yeah, well, okay, sure.
I really don't
thinking then like he might be the
killer. Was supposed to be a manifestation of his inner turmoil while he was doing a very important I don't know. I guess that's like his final, whatever you would consider. Is it like what is it called? I don't even know what it's called. Your final performance before they like grade you as a pianist or something. I don't know how it really works in
it's
music.
Probably got a name, but it's his final exam or his thesis or whatever.
Yeah. I assume you have to like compose an original piece and then perform it for a bunch of experts or whatever. I'm not sure how it would work, but looks like they just listen to you and make sour pusses the whole time, being like, what is this guy doing? I guess, well, I mean, we're sort of already talking about it, so why don't we just go right into the brief history?
Love it.
A brief history.
This is the segment of the show where we're going to each talk about our history with the film. It is also the segment of the show where I open a drink. Everybody else can do the same if they'd like, whether it be juice or wine or water.
I'm drinking a giant
saline drip
water. No, I'm having.
Yeah, I had my Christmas party last night, and let's just say I called in sick to work today.
My tummy doesn't feel good.
Ben, once again, why don't you go ahead and go first and let us know your storied history with Black Christmas?
Well, for me, it's a movie that was always on the video shelves, and when I'm consuming as much horror as possible, I just kind of grabbed it and care what time of year it was. Black Christmas, sure, I'd heard as a kid that it's an amazing film. I've seen this movie countless times, and every time I've watched it, I just don't care. Like, it's one of those movies. I was talking about this earlier with a friend, that when you watch a movie and you're so unenthused that you don't even remember the characters' names,
that happens to me all the time for movies. Even when I care about the movies, I still don't. I have a real rough time remembering character names. But I also have a real rough time remembering human beings' names that I interact with on a daily basis. So that might just be my brain.
Yeah, you think my last name is actually Christmas?
Yeah, I'm like, well, okay, when are we gonna have Ben Christmas back? It's been a while.
But it's upon the most recent viewing, realizing that I wanted it to be a mindless slasher, like one of the Halloween films, one of the Friday the 13th films, and it's not what it is. I told Jason, he mentioned before, it's like a North American proto-slasher, and it wasn't all about just the killing, it was about the characters within it. So prepping to come on the show made me see this movie in a completely different light, and made me realize that I wanted the movie to be something that it wasn't at that time. So it's very enlightening. What about you two?
Well, the first time I saw this, I think I saw this in high school, but it's fuzzy. There were so many movies that I were watching at that time that a bunch of them kind of fused together. So I didn't really have a solid positive experience for this movie, probably for the same reason that you did, where you were expecting it to be a Friday the 13th or a Nightmare on Elm Street, but it ended up being sort of something completely different that I wasn't as interested in. So it kind of was lost to the fog of time. And then I watched it again at the beginning of the pandemic, and I enjoyed it a lot more. I also was watching it with people who are particularly enthusiastic about this movie, so their enthusiasm and their sort of like excitement for it infected me a little bit more, and I did find myself enjoying it a lot more than the first time I'd watched it. Since then, I don't think I've watched it again, but I watched it. I tried to watch it last night, but I'm a little bit sick and I fell asleep, so I had to watch it again today. So I just finished watching it not that long ago. I watched it after work today, and yeah, I mean, it's definitely slow paced. It's a slow burn, but it's also dealing with things that are a little bit more grown up and real than most of your slasher films of the era. So it's almost like it's a little bit more grown up and not necessarily just for teenagers. It's for people who are in college or moving beyond that through university into real life, and what that looks like beyond, extended education. What is your life going to look like? And that's kind of what this movie is dealing with, which I appreciate. It was also cool to see all the Toronto locations that I'm familiar with. I'm like, oh, that's the University of Toronto. I've been there. I know that place.
It's basically Scott Pilgrim. And
I almost got Black Christmas when I went there.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, I mean, I had heard of it. I was very familiar with the calls coming from inside the house, because that's a very common trope, and like it's parodied all the time. But it's interesting to know sort of the origin of that. The
line apparently isn't it's coming from inside the house. It's coming from the house. And I was like, the line's different too? This is a real Luke father moment here.
That's what I was gonna say. Like it got turned into the call. The call is coming from inside the house. It got turned into that over the years, which is interesting. There's like a term for those.
Mandela effect that's ever happened is people misremembering and misquoting things. By the way,
well, there's like a term for that. It's not the Mandela effect, but somebody coined a term for like the.
Yeah, it's us. It's called the Howie Mandela effect.
It's the Howie Mandela effect. Yeah. That's what that's called going forward. But I watched this movie kind of over the course of the week this week. I have a hard time with older movies sometimes, but this one, besides the slow plotting POV stuff that I think could have been shortened up a bit, and there was like a really weird pan at the end of the movie that just seemed to keep going and going and going to like show this whole house to have the big like reveal at the end.
I was supposed to show you how many people died. I think that was the point of
True. Oh yeah, all the rooms. Yeah, okay. I didn't put that together. That's a really good point. But it has that. It's got a little bit of levity. It's got a little bit of fun, but it is a very like dry slice of life movie with horror.
That humor sizzles right at the start, maybe a little bit towards the middle, and then it's just gone. Yeah. All your comedic characters are gone.
Yeah. Like I thought Barb was going to be final girl. Even I didn't realize Jess was sort of the babysitter out of the Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, which this movie is based off.
Well, I think also Barb is just
urban legend
in terms of like fame or notoriety. Like she was probably also like maybe not at the time, but like for us looking back on it, you would just assume because she's sort of the most recognizable face, other than maybe Andrea Martin, who you're just like, oh, I know her because she's in every Canadian television show ever made.
Well, Margot Kidder,
John Saxon too.
Yeah, I mean, But I'm talking about the ladies who are going up against the Murmur Man or whatever they call him. What's his name? The Mumbler? The Moaner?
The Moaner.
Yeah.
Yeah. She hadn't really. Margot Kidder hadn't really done anything yet at this point. There's a lot of like TV and stuff.
Is she Canadian? Right? Is she Canadian? I don't know. Because the majority of the cast.
I didn't think so.
I didn't think so either, but I also didn't look it up, so I don't know. There's a couple points where it sounds like she is. Like she's because everybody in this movie has a real thick ass Ontario accent. Like it's just
yes,
they do. Out of these people.
Well, what the fuck accent does Jess have? Is she from like Sweden or something?
I assumed she was French Canadian.
I thought English.
Yeah. Well, there we go. None of us know.
None of us really know.
It's Olivia Hussey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's kept working right up until she passed. She was in a lot of voice acting and stuff. She played Talia al Ghul in one of the Batman things.
Yeah. Argentinian British actress.
Oh, okay, yeah, there it is. But she also sounds like she has a mid-Atlantic accent a little bit in there too, which is really like 70s acting.
Very true.
I don't know. Because it was Canadian, I just assumed it was French Canadian. I'm like, she must be French Canadian or some shit.
She didn't say "oh" even a single time though.
That's France.
Sorry. Yeah, true. No, but yeah, just to sort of in summation, I watched it this week and I enjoyed it, and it was a little boring, but I'm getting better at that kind of stuff. So,
what, watching movies? Watching movies,
like watching movies and not being like, it's a little bit boring.
Well, that's good. Cool. I guess we can move on to production talk since we're already sort of dabbling in it.
All right. Quiet on set. Are we rolling? Okay, let's shoot this piece of shit. Sound. Speed. Action!
Damn it. I wasn't ready for the cue. My brain's all fried up today. Listen, we got some interesting stuff from this movie. It's based off of an urban legend called The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, which I mentioned earlier. This is according to Turner Classic Movies. It was directed by Bob Clarke and written by Rob Moore, and the script was originally titled Stop Me. And yeah, it was filmed in Toronto, as we kind of already touched on, and the production budget was about $650,000, and its domestic/worldwide gross total was $4 million. That's why they've remade it a bunch of times. They were like,
of that budget was to buy and destroy a grand piano.
Right?
Yeah.
So it did pretty well, and I can see why other directors have gone and tried to capture lightning in a bottle, because this movie feels very much like Canada's answer to Halloween. Like it really feels.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like there aren't, especially at this time, there weren't a ton of like Christmas horror movies, and that's a thing that they've been trying to. We talked about it during our Rare Exports episode, where it's like there'll be like a little bubble of all these Christmas horrors that come out, and then the bubble will pop, and then it'll go dead for 5 to 10 years, and then we'll have another one. And we had one in the late 2010s, between like 2016 and 2020, we had a bunch of them. And over the last couple of years, there's been a few, but nothing that has sort of reinvigorated it, I'd say.
Also, I'd like to say that I said it's the answer to Halloween. This movie predates Halloween by 4 years, which is
there you go. So it's the inspiration for Halloween, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I have to say that this, for me, feels like Canada's version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
In how bleak it is. And the thing is, like, the release date for this movie in Canada was October 11th, 1974. The release date for Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the States was October 11th, 1974.
They came out the same day.
In different countries, and they were released. Like, this was released later in the States, closer to Christmas. And Texas Chainsaw was released later in Canada. Releasing a Christmas horror film in October it just seems kind of pointless to me.
It's weird, but I mean, I get it because it's like October is spooky month, so I can see why there would probably be some weird, business brains that are like, well, people only see spooky stuff during spooky season. We can't put this during Christmas. It's scary. It's like, but it's a Christmas movie. It's like, but you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Theater runs were a lot longer back then, and I remember like other movies have come out. Didn't like Batman Returns come out in October, and it's a Christmas kind of a movie, like
that sounds right. Yeah,
it came out in September, October because it was going to run through Christmas. Nowadays, theater runs are so short that a lot of people decide to release their movies on Christmas to get that like we want people to go to the movies on Christmas Day and see it.
Which
and that's
is the biggest time.
Apparently, Christmas Day is like a huge movie-going day.
Yeah,
I think I've done it one time in my whole life. I went to see Not Another Teen Movie with some friends on Christmas Day, like 20 years ago.
It's a lot of families have that as like a tradition. Like they go on Christmas Day to see whatever the movie is, right? Even when I was a kid, I remember like lots of my friends, that was like a thing they would do. And it was just as confusing to me as it seems to be to you, where I'm like, what? Don't you like, I don't know, open your presents and then just hang out all day, or like have to go to some relative's house that you don't actually want to fucking go to?
Yeah,
that's exactly what
open your gifts and take your favorite one and just hide for the rest of the day.
Yeah,
especially play Majora's Mask for 13 hours straight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man, the year I got
I remember the year I got Majora's Mask, I was playing it and I was playing it all day, and then Arjun called. Remember Arjun? You guys know Arjun. He's been on the show. And we just sat there, and he also got it. And we just sat there and we both played Majora's Mask on the phone for like 5 hours together. That was fun.
Because that was another thing we used to do.
What a beautiful memory I've just remembered. I forgot
about the was also coming from inside the house.
Yeah, Arjun was in my attic the whole time.
Yeah.
Sitting on the phone with your friends and playing video games because there was no headsets or Discord or anything like that yet.
Or did not plug into the internet.
Yeah. You weren't playing with each other, you're just also playing video games.
Yeah. Yeah. So Bob, what's his name? Bob Clarke. He's directed a bunch of stuff, a lot of horror, but he also directed Porky's 2. He directed both of the Baby Genius movies. If you guys love Baby Geniuses,
that's his cash cow.
But nothing for me at least, nothing that I'm as familiar with as I am with than I am with this movie. Like out of all of his filmography, this is probably the one that I've seen the most.
A Christmas Story?
No, that was never a Christmas movie for me. That wasn't one.
Good.
It was.
I hate
it.
That
was
movie
one
so much.
I also don't like it. I don't know. It's one of those ones that I'm like, yeah, but none of these kids are setting up traps and trying to stop burglars. Like this shit's boring to me. Santa's not even in it. There ain't no Jack Skellington in here.
All the cringy shit that happened to him as a kid. That's kind of what this movie's like. All the cringy stuff happening to this sorority.
I also understand that A Christmas Story is a beloved movie, and I'm not saying that it's bad. I just personally don't have that connection to it that like a lot of boomers have a really strong connection to it. A lot of Gen Z people have a really strong connection to it from their parents having that strong connection. But for me, it was not one of those movies that my parents would put on to be like, you got to watch this movie.
No, I judge people based off of their like or dislike of A Christmas Story very strongly.
I find it weird when people attach like personality traits to it, where I'm like, okay, that's strange. But then I'll sit there and sing "This Is Halloween" in your face at unpleasant volumes. So wrong tune.
It's my favorite trope. According to the Black Christmas Wiki, which apparently exists, Warner Brothers briefly retitled the film Silent Night, Evil Night in the US. But they reinstated the original title due to audience recognition. Okay.
I think Black Christmas is pretty good title.
Yeah.
But who am I to say? I don't have a lot of, other than the fact that this, the majority of this movie was filmed in Toronto. There's lots of recognizable locations. If you went to the University of Toronto, you'll recognize a lot of the interiors, but a ton of the exteriors as well. And then that house is like fairly close to where you used to live, Jason. Actually, you probably have walked back past the Black Christmas house multiple times and not even known it.
I think I know the one. Like, I think I know where it is. I think I
looked it up, and it was fairly close to where you used to live. And I was trying to see if that bagged head was still in the attic window. It's not. The house doesn't look anything like it used to. It's also a private residence now, so people just live in it, which is kind of cool. But it's like when you see the Home Alone house, and then you see photos of like the fucking millennials that bought it and redid the interior, and it just looks like ass now. And you're like, oh, it looks like every interior design magazine you've ever fucking seen.
Yeah, gray millennial, I think is the term for what millennials do to homes.
Yeah, I assume the inside of the Black Christmas house has probably been given a similar treatment. All those like awesome wood railings and like dark like walnut finish and stuff has probably all been ripped out and replaced with like stainless steel and shitty squared off everything. Looks like a crappy utilitarian future that nobody wants to be a part of. Anyway, I like the warmth of this house. I think it looks very comfortable and nice, and I think I'll be happy to never see what it looks like on the inside now.
I feel bad.
It is the perfect setting for
I feel bad that upon watching it, I think you see a man first, and I was like, oh, it's a fraternity movie. I didn't know that it was a sorority movie. I feel bad that my brain automatically went there. So I'm going to do better. Women can no. Anyway, don't read that. Okay. Okay. That didn't go the way that I wanted it to go, and I apologize. Why don't we go into the body of the episode?
Okay. Jason, would you prefer the long body or the short body?
The longest body humanly possible.
Everybody back up, because here comes the body of the episode.
All right, well, we made it. We made it to the part of the show where we're going to kind of go beat by beat through the movie. It's not a long movie, and it doesn't have a whole lot of content. I was able to still write like 3 pages of notes, but I don't think that's going to be necessary, because this movie is kind of broken down into 3 major sections. Basically the setup, and then when the cops get involved, and then sort of it becomes a slasher film for like an act. But you know, the opening credits, real creepy. It's playing Silent Night over a house, a full credit sequence like they used to do back up until about the 70s, where you just see the full credits right at the start. Also, at the very end of this movie, this has one of my favorite end credits I've ever seen, and it's just the sound of a phone ringing and silence while the credits roll, and there's a police officer standing outside of the frat house at the end, or the sorority house at the end. That was chilling to the bone, because that call is, well, we'll get to that when we get to it.
It's some pervert in the attic.
I can't believe they never find those 2 bodies. It's insane to me.
There was too much going on, too much commotion. They didn't know.
Well, it's like they just didn't even like care. They acknowledged a disappearance. We'll get to it, but like acknowledging a disappearance, like a missing person, and then it just like they drop that altogether.
Yeah. The police force didn't seem to be all that organized in this movie. No. Not well organized anyway. It seemed to also be like relatively small. I'm not sure where this like town is supposed to be, but it seems like it's more or less like a university town and nothing much more than that.
It's Haddonfield. it's the
well, they also refer to like
Illinois.
Yeah, they refer to people as townies and stuff. So I'm like, oh, this isn't supposed to be set in Toronto, because like Toronto, even in the 70s, was a major metropolitan city. So it's like, okay, this is supposed to be some university town where there's the people that live there, and then there's the big school, and most of the people leave during the holiday season.
I think Illinois or Massachusetts are 2 potentials, because townies sounds like what Boston people call out of towners.
But I mean, even if you went to university in Ontario, that's what, like, if you went to like St. Catharines or something, then you would refer to the people that lived in St. Catharines as the townies. Right. So it's like, I think it's just sort of a universal thing that when you're in a university town, it's sort of that shitty attitude that like people have towards the locals of the residency that you're being educated by.
Mm-hmm.
asshole. But I mean, they're children. They're supposed to be children, right? They're not. Their brains aren't fully developed yet.
I looked it up because Andrea Martin looks so different in this. She looks in this movie. She looks like she could be related to Harold Ramis, and she doesn't. I don't know what happened. Like not in a bad way. I don't mean that as
The
like
hair, yeah.
I just mean like the way her face looks. I also had a friend when I was a kid, and his mom looked like Andrea Martin, and this brought me back. It was interesting. But I looked up how old she was in this movie because she looks so young, and she's somehow like 27 in this.
Maybe
I kind of figured as much.
Maybe she lived the life of clean living.
Did
That means that when she was on SCTV, she was in her 40s.
I don't think that's true.
I think everyone on SCTV looked pretty old, except for Candy.
Except for, well, yeah, but
it's the soft lighting. It's the soft focus and soft lighting of the.
Martin Short looked like a perpetual baby man until he started getting crow's feet in the early 2000s. Yeah.
Did either of you look into who was originally supposed to play the character?
No.
Gilda Radner.
Oh, was she still alive at this point?
Yeah. Like some like scheduling thing fell through, and I was curious to know if either of you thought that like Andrea Martin actually turned out to play the role in a much better way than Radner could have, because I think it was a happy, not accident, but rescheduling.
I think having Margot Kidder and Gilda Radner on the screen would have been too many. I think Andrea Martin was relatively new actor. She was probably still at Yuck Yucks, like up Second City at the time. So, and I was reading in my notes. I didn't bring up a production talk because it's just kind of whatever. It's more of a conversational thing. But Bob Clarke wanted to sort of have recognizable actors, but also have people from the local comedy system. Martin ends up being in this, and she kills it. She's so good in this movie. She's like, I don't know. She's always captivating in anything she does, and she always has been. She's just such a good presence. But you know, when you take a comedic actor and have them do serious roles, I feel like comedic actors can nail serious in a different way than a hard serious actor can. And I've always said this is why Jordan Peele makes great movies. They said that you have to get into somebody's head differently as a comedian than you do as a dramatic actor. So I think that's part of why she was so good in this.
And why I think she was a better choice in this is because you've got these characters like Jess and Barb and Clare, who are all so very different, but Phyllis is like the glue between all of them. It actually makes the rest of the cast feel like they actually are a sisterhood and a family. And I don't think Radner could have done that.
If Mrs. Math is the house mom, Phil is like the house aunt.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
I think that's where casting, that's probably like the strongest casting in this film for me.
I just couldn't believe I didn't mean it like that. Come on. She does have the hair though. I thought that Margot Kidder's role was like really interesting and weird, and it's hard to even realize that she goes on to play, you know, Lois Lane after seeing this. She's drunk the whole time. She gets progressively more drunk throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. She's like filthy. She's got a filthy mouth.
And she's from the city. She's a city gal. I get 25 perverted fucking messages a day over here. You guys, this is your amateur numbers.
Officer Nash had never heard of the word fellatio. What a dumbass. Fucking police. That's great. Right. So anyway, we're also introduced here to the sorority house and the POV heavy breathing man. I call him the POV killer until I change his name to the moaner in my notes. And he's like snorts while he's creeping.
Yeah,
very weird, very nuanced.
He sounds like a pig, and then he calls everybody pigs. It's weird.
Yeah,
he's a little pig man. You never get to see what he looks like, but I assume like a pig man.
Well, I was going to ask you guys. We
Wait.
see his eye briefly. His iris is all fucking weird.
Well, that's when I was like, oh, it's not Peter, because Peter has like crazy intense blue eyes, and then this guy has like those weird like almost gray brown eyes.
But it looked like red in the version I saw.
Yeah,
Like
he looks almost like Darth
pigment
Maul.
with a reflection.
He's got Darth Maul eyes.
Right?
Yeah.
But
assuming
I
he
have to
looks like
say-
a normal man, I was going to say that I think he just looks almost exactly like Peter, because in universe, his silhouette was unmistakable from Peter's to the point that Jess thought when he came through the window. And it's so funny too, because Peter's just going like, hey, I'm here to help you. And
why didn't you answer me when I called? And it's also like, but Peter, the last time you talked to me was on the phone and you were weeping hysterically. So I'm kind of, even if you're not the murderer, I'm a little bit creeped out by you right now.
Weary of
the Billy Loomis effect.
Yeah.
But I really have to say, like, I loved the intro of like Billy approaching the house and he's just trying to find a way in. And you see him like walk up the front and then back away. And then Barb comes down and she's like, who left the door open? Like he almost walked in the front door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like what would happen? And then he just climbs up the lattice work,
the
trestle into the attic. I'm thinking, for a movie I've seen countless times that I've never really enjoyed, I'm already engaged. And then it goes into meeting all of the girls inside. And I'm thinking this viewing could change my opinion on a movie I've trounced repeatedly.
It's always nice when that happens.
It is.
It's the worst when it's a movie that you think you've always liked and you watch and you're like, oh, damn, this movie actually kind of blows ass. But
I felt that way doing Stay Tuned twice in the same week when we did it for our show, and then I was on Ben's show like the same week, and I was like, this movie's kind of rough and like kind of unfunny, and I should have kept it in my like, when you have a memory of something like kind of what you're describing, Steve, like keep it in the past, and then the image in your mind can never be destroyed.
Yeah. Sometimes things are not worth revisiting.
Sometimes dead is better.
Yeah.
Barb's on the phone with the POV man is stalking. I thought it was funny that she calls her mom a gold-plated whore.
Yeah, I'm gonna call my mom that this Christmas, I think, and see what happens.
Just having too much wine. You he says some out of pocket shit.
Mom, you are absolutely a genuine gold-plated whore. More brandy?
Yeah. And they get a call from the moaner here.
Also, I think
it's the moaner on the phone again.
Yeah,
it's the Mona.
The phone call that Barb is having is like a disappointing phone call where her mom is basically brushing her off for the holidays and being like, I'm going to go hang out with some fucking wiener man and you can go do your own thing. Merry Christmas.
Wiener man.
Bye. Which is a classic not horror trope, but holiday movie trope where it's like, oh, this is a shitty family dynamic where your mom cares so little about you and your feelings that holidays like Christmas don't actually matter.
Or like Home Alone, where they just forget about you altogether.
Yeah, they forget you exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the boner moaner man calls up on the phone and
the boner moaner man.
He moans into the phone. The boner moaner moans on the phone, and everybody gathers round and they all have a nice long chuckle at him. They call him a pervert, and then he says, I'm going to kill you, and then hangs up the phone. And that seems to shake them a little bit, at least. Like she's like, oh, of all the boner calls I've ever got, I've never been threatened like that before.
I liked how plainly he says it too. I'm going to kill you.
Yeah. I love that shot actually, because the camera slowly pans from face to face to face as they're all hearing this, and we're led to believe that they've heard this numerous times, but for some reason they're all huddled around the phone this one time, the receiver, and it seems like it's actually affecting them all slightly more than it did previously. And then you end on that super clean, I'm going to kill you. And that's it. And it's pretty great filmmaking.
Mm-hmm. Also like it's almost like indecipherable what he's saying a lot of the time. Like it's unaudible where you just can't understand a lot of without subtitles, I don't know if I would have been able to fully decipher all of the words that are coming out of his mouth, especially because he's switching voices and doing all those weird piggy noises and stuff, and just making like sloppy sounds and grunting pig sounds. You're like, okay. The phone calls are genuinely pretty disturbing for the most part. Like by the end, I'm like, all right, I've heard enough of these. I don't want to hear another one. But they're 70s horror scary, where like things are so garbled and off-putting, and the technology is so poor. Not necessarily the filmmaking, but like in the world that they live in, that it's got that sort of like grunge, like old world things where everything is like, it's just before like the gloss of the 90s come in and refinish everything, you know, like in the mid to late 80s and early 90s, like malls and stuff all looked the exact same way that they did when they were built in the early 70s. This is like right in the middle of that, you know?
Yep. No, I agree completely.
Everything looks like it smells like cigarettes. You're like, I just smell that room.
This house reeks of cigarettes. You can just tell.
Yeah. That's the color tint of the walls. It's just nicotine.
They smoked around the camera too much too, and like the tint of the camera makes everything look smoky and cigarette colored.
I don't know if this is something you wanted to touch on later on, but as we're talking about how interesting this movie is and how engaging it is so far, I can't help but ignore certain elements of the movie to just kind of take away from that. Like, why is there a phone in the attic? Why is it a different number? And how does he have the phone number for the sorority house?
So, I mean, for me, the way I understood it is that he wasn't making the calls from the attic. He was making the calls from the house mother's room. Like he would sneak down and go into her room and make the calls from there, because she has her own private phone line, because she just wants to have her own phone line. Because she's like, I'm not one of the sorority sisters. If people need to reach me directly, I'll have my own phone line. So that made sense to me. How he has their phone number, I don't know. He probably the same way that he knew to go into this house, unless he was just walking by, right?
Probably. I guess I misinterpreted that, because I thought I saw him hang up the phone with the attic window in the foreground.
I don't know. I don't remember that particular shot, but I do remember later on he calls from a bedroom, and I just assumed that was the house mother's, Mrs. Mack's room, because there's a little tiny moment later on between the cops where it's like, are there any other phones in the house? And she's like, yeah, there's one upstairs in the house mother's room. And the Freddy Krueger cop says, he's like, no, that's a different phone number altogether, a different line. We don't need to worry about it. And nobody, that phone hasn't gotten any weird phone calls. It's just this one that's getting them. So yeah, the only way that it worked back then. Nowadays, everybody has their own fucking individual cell phone. This movie would be way different.
Yeah,
the call is coming from your general area. According to Find My Phone.
I was saying to Ben in the pre-show, like, even when I was a kid, we had 2 phone lines because my dad had like a business line. Right. So I think it was more common before cell phones. You know, you would have multiple lines in your house potentially. Like this never happened for me, but I could have seen myself probably for Christmas being like, "Can I get my own phone line?" You know, especially with the addition of the internet, people would get a separate line for internet. Just different stuff. This is just what I was thinking about. Now it seems ridiculous to have one phone line in your house.
Well, no, I looked into this after we were speaking about it, Jason, and for the most part, you're right. Like it really came to prominence in the mid 80s, but it was not unheard of to have multiple phone lines in your home, depending on like the size of the house in the early to mid 70s. So yeah, they covered that right there. So.
That's also probably like how the conceit of the idea came forth, where they're like,
that's what I mean. That's
it's like somebody had 2 lines in their phone in their house, and like somebody was prank calling them from the other phone line. And like, what if it was a horror movie and this was the whole plot?
And the call,
or they try and like call from the attic and just pick up the phone and getting the busy signal every time.
God damn it!
And just give up and like crawl back down.
Piggy needs to go back and rethink his plans.
Oh, somebody's at the door. Speaking of Nightmare Men.
Steve, Jason, it's your friend Alex here. It's the day you guys have all been waiting for, I know. 211 episodes. You did it. You finally passed Everybody Loves Raymond. 210 episodes. I know you guys behind the scenes have been talking about this a lot, and I just want to finally congratulate you guys. You guys are finally the Ray Romano of podcasts. That's so exciting. I'm so excited for you guys. Love ya.
I wonder if Ray Romano has a podcast.
Good.
Probably an episode recap of every episode of Everybody Loves Raymond.
This episode, my wife gets mad at me again, and my father-in-law is an asshole, and Brad comes over and he says, "Ray."
Anyway,
he does. He's a
I
Muppet.
don't know. He looks like a.
I mean, they both.
Listen, I'm gonna stop insulting people. Barb is a bully, which was wild to me. She says something pretty terrible that I don't even want to repeat to Claire. Claire is offended, and then Mrs. Mac shows up, and she looks like the Penguin from the 1960s. She's got a top hat on, and she's got a cigarette in a. Well, it's not a top hat, but she's got a cigarette in one of those things, and it's pointed upwards like this, and she's the comic relief in this movie that doesn't really need comic relief, but she is that. And
she's
then
hilarious. She is pretty funny, actually. I like her. I like that she code switches between when she's talking to anybody really and when she's by herself. Like she has two different versions of herself, or one she's like, God fucking damn it, I hate this shit. Oh God, what the, and she's just constantly sneaking booze in the house, like opening Bibles that have them, or it's not a Bible, but it's like a
textbook.
And then she's got one hidden in the toilet. She's got one in her suitcase. She's got little flasks of whiskey everywhere, all over the house.
It's sherry, actually. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, is it?
I think yeah. It's like,
I read the brand, but I didn't read what kind of booze it was. But it's a brown liqueur.
Yeah,
and,
it's a really funny gag in a movie that doesn't really need a recurring gag. But every time she was on screen, you knew that she was going to pull a liquor out of a funny.
Yeah, it was more like a where's she going to get it from this time kind of thing.
Yeah,
and it's so gross too, because she's swishes it around in her mouth, and she uses it to rinse her mouth out when she's brushing her teeth and stuff. It's really nasty, but at the same time, it's quite funny.
Yeah, she's an old school alcoholic.
Yeah, functional.
Yeah.
Came in at the weird time for that one.
We're talking about Miss Mac and her hidden booze collection.
Oh, I love Miss Mac.
Her sherry hidden everywhere in the whole house. During all of this, Claire goes up to a dark room. The Monster Man POV guy, the boner moaner, as we find out. Actually, at this point in the movie, in my head, I'm like, I think the movie wants us to think that the POV killer stalker guy and the boner moaner aren't necessarily the same person. I mean, it's obvious they are, but it's not. I feel like they reveal that in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Though it's hard to make that work for a modern audience now, because even my brain was like, are they trying to make it so that I don't think that the guy in the attic is the guy on the phone? Because I do. And it's like, I'm like, oh wait, this is the movie where the call is coming from inside the house. Of course it is. Even in my most recent viewing, I kind of forgot that was the sort of the poster line. And I guess maybe it would work back then, but even the idea that like you guys just said, it wasn't uncommon for people to have two lines in their homes at this time. Yeah. So that would even be a thing that would be easier to understand as an audience member. So I don't know if they were trying to make you not think that, but I certainly just assumed it was. I think for me, the big one was them constantly trying to push Peter on us as the murderer. Because that didn't really work for me. But at the same time, there was a point near the end where I'm like, is it him? I don't remember. I don't think it's him. And then I have a vision in my head of him being dead. And I'm like, is it him though? And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not.
I think I'm so Scream coded after watching all the Scream movies in a very short period of time that I was like, this movie is going to do the Scream thing where we for the whole movie don't think it's Peter, and then right at the last second. I just watched I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, and those fucking idiots did the same thing in that movie, and I'm like, are you serious right now? And the guy goes, Bob, my last name is Bob's son, idiot. And I was like, wow, because the movie's fine. Honestly, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, I think gets too much hate. I was actually into it. It just has a lot of really dumb stuff in it, and it's written by somebody else who clearly was like, the studio was like, you got to have 2 killers, and also you got to have one of them be the son of the original killer, and also.
We're also having Kevin Williamson writing the script for both Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's a different writer and director for I Still Know, and then they tried to do a weird thing at the end. I really look forward to the third one, which apparently is also garbage.
I will always know that this movie is awful.
Yeah. This movie is not that though, but it does have that same kind of vibe, and I feel like
It does.
I think, like I'm saying, like I think that it was too scream brained going into this. I wish I had seen this in 1974 when these movies didn't exist, so I could be genuinely surprised by things. But
I think in 74 this movie would be genuinely horrifying.
Like scary.
It's intense. Yeah, it's got a lot of tension and like a lot of like good moments where the camera is shooting through a window pane and you can't hear what people are saying, and you're sort of putting things together through context, and it's a real film, guys. Not like
really
I won't never not know what you did last summer or whatever the fuck movie you're talking about over there, Jason.
They should know the third. They should call the third one. I will know what you do next summer. I will know what you do next summer. Look for my directorial debut.
Keeping in mind, there's 4 movies in that franchise now.
Oh yeah, didn't they make a new one recently?
Yeah, there's the movie, 2 sequels, and then a remake.
There's another one. I thought it was 2 movies that are like pretty good as one story, and then
no, it's I Know What You Did Last Summer. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. I Will Always Know What You Did Last Summer, and then I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah, it came out recently, like I think like 2022 or something.
Like this summer.
I think this movie has the most accurate title in that, like, you think Christmas, you think joy, happiness, family times, bright colors, Santa Claus, gifts, blah blah blah. But like Black Christmas, like this movie is dark and it's mean.
Yeah,
and
it's mean.
It's really hard on all of the characters in it.
Right here is when he literally puts a bag over her face and suffocates her, which is an intense thing and an intense scene. They put it right on the cover of one of the posters, and throughout the whole movie they just keep cutting back to it as like a jump scare, which is crazy.
It's a disturbing image, and it's
really
a good one. And it's not something that's been done before. So, and I really don't think that. I mean, it's been done in other movies beyond this movie, but never as like a constant set piece where we constantly flash back to it to be like, remember, everybody's looking for this girl, and she's in the fucking house the whole time upstairs.
And I think it's brilliant because it's such a grounding shot that they keep returning to. Because no matter how the story progresses, it's like, remember, this is where we are, and it sets you back, and then you're trying to build up from that. And it's always like if you felt like you were drowning underneath all this dread and you're finally about to break the surface of it, they show you that and it just drags you right back down. And they have to fight to get back up again. It's brilliant filmmaking.
It's also like one of those things where, you know, in a lot of movies like this, the safety comes from fortification, or like as soon as you get home, you're safe. Whereas here, the most safe the characters always feel is when they're as far away from that house as possible. Anytime they're in the house, you feel the danger ramping up, which is a nice little turn. It's like usually you're like, okay, they're locked inside, the doors are locked, they're safe. And it's like, no, don't lock the doors. It's gonna make it harder for you to get out later. He's in there.
Yeah, home is the most dangerous place you could be.
Yeah,
that should be the tagline on the poster.
Like, you get Bob Clarke on the phone. Is he still alive?
I don't know.
Home
is where the 45. Dark is.
That's funny. The way you said it was funny too, because you seemed annoyed by yourself.
It was in my head. I'm like, just get it out. Just get it out.
Yeah.
It'll be in there for a while if you don't. So she's murdered, head bagged and suffocated, and then brought to the attic. And she talks to her dad, or she's getting picked up the next day by her father, right? Which is information we get, I think, through her talking to her boyfriend, who's like the most Canadian person in this entire movie. You got a big mouth.
Why don't you come on down to the...
We're going down to the police station to talk to that guy. He's got a big mouth.
Why don't we go to the Legion, eh?
Art Hindle, wasn't it?
I'm not sure who it was. But even when we come to him later, when they're like, she's missing or whatever, he's playing goalie in ice hockey, just like, and he's cat pawing every single puck that comes right at him.
Yeah.
Pretty good goal. Pretty good in goal.
There's a call on the phone for Jess.
Yeah. Believe it or not, he was in Porky's.
Okay,
of course. Jess and Peter wanted have to have a conversation tomorrow. She wants to talk face to face. I kind of knew where that was going. I felt it. I also made a note here that Jess is all over Star Wars video games as a voice actor, which I thought, Steven, you'd be interested to know.
Yeah, she's in Rogue Squadron.
Yeah. There's more shenanigans with Miss. I thought they were saying Mrs. Smythe, and then I thought they were saying Mrs. Math, but it's Mrs. Mac, and I'm an idiot. Just look it up.
I mean, subtitles help for me.
True. I didn't have subtitles for this one, unfortunately.
Same. It did make it a little bit more difficult, didn't it? Surprisingly.
Yeah. Especially those phone calls where he's jerking it into the receiver. Or whatever.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
You didn't want to hear the exact words he was saying?
I thought he was murdering
you have a
people on those
transcript?
phone calls.
Yeah, there is a transcript. No, he just says a lot of stuff about his penis and their parts, and it's really gross.
It's really gross.
I hadn't looked into it, but I've been told by people in the past that it was actually different actors making the calls.
It was people that worked on the crew and actors in the movie and local. Yeah, it was like a mishmash of things happening. Like I
figured it was that because the voices.
Yeah.
Like I mean.
Yeah.
I literally do voices all day, every day, and I can do a bunch of different ones. But to switch that drastically between two voices is pretty difficult.
Or what sounds like two voices at the same time as well.
There are some that are overlapping. I'm like, ooh, he's one of those like throat singers that can like double their vocal cords or whatever.
It worked really, really well, I thought, though, because it made it even more unsettling.
Yeah, I agree.
The more I talk about this movie, the more I like it.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah,
that's something that happens on the show pretty frequently with me, especially this movie. Like spoilers, I like, and then I think I'm just going to like it more talking about it anyway. But Jess goes to talk to Claire. There's no answer, and that's another one of the jump scares where we just see her murdered. And it's I know what you're saying, Ben. Like it really. There's all this during all of this is where we get a lot of that levity of Mrs. Mac like finding booze bottles all over the place, which you kind of already covered. But you're right. Like when it cuts back to this, like it's horrifying, even by today's standards of horror. Like suffocation is so messed up.
And I feel like she was the sweetest character.
Yeah. Well, Barb said all that insane shit to her, and then she was like, "Fuck you, I'm out of here. I'm leaving tomorrow anyway. I'm gonna go pack." And then
I think she's meant to be like the most innocent character or whatever in terms of like naivety and just like experience in the world. And then obviously Barb is like, I'm from the city, I've been fucking double fisting cocks my whole life or whatever. And you're like, whoa, Jesus,
whoa.
She's got a half a glass of like straight whiskey and a cigarette in her hand the entirety of this movie. She's feeding like champagne to children at one point. You're like, oh, Barb is kind of a bad person.
She's
Barb sucks. The next day at a church, an older man gets smoked by a snowball. He was supposed to meet his daughter. It's Claire's dad. And then the long hair guy comes over and he's like, sorry about that, man. And then he's like, I need to meet up. I need to know where the sorority is. And is this Peter or not Peter? Claire's boyfriend, or is this just a random long hair?
Just some dude.
Okay. So over to Bob.
Gives him directions.
Over to Bob, who was introduced at the beginning of the movie, who's going to be Santa for the kids. And he goes, oh, fuck, which I thought was funny, right in front of a kid. And Claire's dad getting a tour of the sorority is funny because there's a lot of like, rebellious hippie teenager imagery, hippie photos everywhere, or hippie posters everywhere, a lot of self-expression, and it's pretty funny.
I was gonna ask you about the comedy in this film, and it's a perfect opportunity for it. do you find that the comedy worked or was necessary? Because this guy is definitely a prude. And then you have Mrs. Mac trying to like cover up like the poster on the wall and stuff like that. Even just her, like you said before, hiding booze around the house. Do you think the movie needed that humor? Because I found it way too sparse.
Well, I think one of you mentioned that there's a point in this movie where all the comic relief is dead. And I think if you take that into the context of the film, it adds a layer of despair. So when you have these bits of levity in the beginning, but you still keep cutting back to the suffocated Clare, I think when you draw that line and realize, because I wouldn't have realized, I think Steven, you were the one that said it, like they're all dead, and there's no opportunity for comedy again.
The comedy dies with them, and then there's a really ham-fisted comedic moment after they're all dead that they put, because I think it was probably off kilter in terms of balance for those moments of levity, and the pacing probably felt off. And they're like, we need something to bring us up a little bit here in order for these next few deaths to have more weight to them. I do think it's important, because if it was just dreary and dredge the entire time, I don't know if the sequential death of these characters would be as impactful, because you need to have that sort of like out of sync balance of your emotions in order to have things land properly. So the one I'm talking about is like after Mrs. Mac dies, we then have not really much humor left within the movie, especially after the drunk character Barb dies as well. It's almost completely gone at that point. So there's this one random moment where these two street watch guys, the people that are on patrol looking for the killer, show up at the house, and they're just like, I don't know, like a weird like comedy duo where they're really trying to be like, oh yeah, so before you close it, and then they're like fast talking, bumbling locals or whatever, and they're meant to be like ugly old men, and then they like laugh like, oh man, they're so brutally ugly, fuck, I'd rather be stabbed to death than have to talk to those two guys again. That's not what they say, but it's along those lines. And then mostly they're there to say like, make sure you lock all of your doors and windows. So I think that it's implied that they then go lock all the doors and windows, which makes it harder for them to escape later. But anyway, to answer your question, I think that in a movie like this, yeah, you do need it. And I kind of appreciated it. And it added a little bit more layering to certain characters, especially someone like Mrs. Mac, whose role was really not necessary. I didn't even know that these types of roles existed in sorority houses, if they even did or do. I don't know.
The host mother is kind of like their guardian that can... But
usually it's an older student, not an actual elderly woman.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's usually like you'll be like the sorority sister who's graduating soon will be the person who's in charge of the house, not like some lady. Unless it's like her house.
Feels like
that's what feels like.
That's what Phyllis kind of feels like. Like,
oh yeah, she seems like she might be the older student or whatever. Yeah, she also just seems like the most grounded and reasonable person. Like she still has a sense of humor and stuff and laughs at things, but she's not really the one ribbing everybody. She knows when to bring people down to like a modest level when they're getting too emotional. But yeah, Mrs. Mac is genuinely just there for comedic relief. There's not really any other purpose for her, I think, other than to find her booze bottles and to have those weird moments of like her switching from being like a fluttery, like, oh, you're so sweet, to like, I just need a goddamn drink. Where's my fucking cat? I can't find my cat anywhere.
And also to have the second most brutal death in the movie, fucking hook through the head.
Yeah.
So the dad doesn't want Claire drinking, cavorting with boys. Mrs. Mac says she's probably at the frat house. Mac mocks him.
Boys.
Mac mocks him in the mirror and drinks some more sherry, rants about what's expected of her, and then she goes to find the cat. Claire's dad catches her calling the cat a prick, which was really funny, and he's disappointed, but she gives him the finger behind his back. We also see Claire's body still in the room, once again cutting back to it. Then there's the scene with Jess telling Peter that she's pregnant, but she doesn't want it. She wants to have an abortion, which is pretty. I didn't expect that to be like a plot point in a movie this old, because people didn't really get abortions and it wasn't really talked about like this, like pretty openly. But he's like, you can't make a decision like this without me. And I laughed out loud, like, come on, man. And Peter's pissed off and tells her to leave.
I think this is probably, for me, the more interesting stuff in the movie is this relationship between these two, and the dilemma that they have, because there isn't really much other story going on. You had a little bit of story with Barb at the beginning where her mom clearly doesn't give a shit about her. We have the dad looking for the daughter that we already know is dead, and I did not really expect him to grow as a character throughout the movie, and he doesn't. So as soon as they drop this, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is probably what we're going to be dealing with in terms of like controversy for this character, Jess, and that means I've finally been able to zero in on who our main character is. This is the main character. Okay, thank you, movie. Because when you look at the rest of the movie, no one else really has any other development or any kind of crisis that they're dealing with other than the two of these characters. And Peter is then almost immediately after the recital part is basically labeled as the murderer by the movie, being like, he did it, guys, right? You all suspect him now. So yeah, I mean, obviously this is the plot. This is where the plot is introduced. Olivia's pregnant, or not Olivia, Jess is pregnant, and she doesn't want to have the baby. Peter does, and it leads to turmoil and a lot for Peter. And for her, it's more so just like she's grappling with the fact that she's like pretty hard set and like, no, like, sorry, I'm not doing this. And he's like trying to convince her. Poorly, I might add. He's not really making any good arguments. He's just yelling at her that he wants it and that she can't do that.
I want to start a family. Yeah, well, there's a pretty poignant scene with that coming up too. But at this point, there's another call to sorority. It's the moaner again. Asks for Billy. It's very freaky. So the girls go to.
Wait, you telling me moan of the boner phones her?
The moan of the boner phones her on the bone phone while he moans. The girls go to the police about Clare and sort of about the moaner. It seems like they've also like told these police about the moaner and they just don't really care. The police tells them that most of the time that girls are missing, they're just up at a cabin with their boyfriend, which is so dismissive. And then back at the house, Jess tells Mrs. Mack about the call. At the police station, this movie does that thing where they kind of just go back and forth between scenes, which is always kind of hard to explain, but I'll do my best. Police asks for the number. Barb says it's fellatio 20880. And he looks freaked out.
And the only reason he's freaked out is because he doesn't know how to spell fellatio.
He doesn't know what the word means also.
It's an Italian word.
Yeah. There's the hockey rink segment.
Well, we also learn another important piece of information, which is that there's also a 13-year-old girl that has gone missing in the town, and the mother is there and she's distraught. And this adds another layer to the mystery. Is there a murderer on the loose? There's two people missing in the same day. Spoiler alert, this girl is murdered and found in the lake, I think. And I guess it's supposed to have also been him. I assumed that when he was talking about the baby, he was referring to this girl that he killed, but I don't know.
So I kind of had a bit of a theory. One of the early phone calls was him actually killing this guy. Yeah. And I don't know if they ever say her name, but he talks about a girl named Agnes.
I think that's a song. That's singing a song, and that's like Agnes is in the song.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think the little girl's name was Agnes. They say her name earlier. The mom does when they're at the police station, but I can't remember what it was. Mrs. Quaife is the name of the mom. Yeah, I think you're right. I think he was killing her. I think every time he's making a call, it's either right after he's murdered somebody or while he's in the midst of murdering somebody. It's kind of inconsistent, but I think that's sort of what they're going for. But yeah, we know that he has murdered somebody before arriving at this house where he's decided to murder everybody inside, and he's just going to stay in there until he gets the job done, I guess.
Yeah, this movie genre bends into psychological thriller a little bit sometimes, or at least psychological horror, where you kind of get lulled into these false senses of comfort with the comedy, and then you'll get, hard cut to a murdered person or a weird phone call that is too horror or like horrific to really even analyze. And I think that's Jess's problem. That's why she can't keep these calls going once they tap the phone, because it's like, she even says, like, these are pretty traumatic for me to sit through. This is pretty terrible. But yeah,
you need to keep him on the line longer.
Yeah. Well, this guy runs around.
Yeah, a giant like server farm of like phone connections. I have absolutely no idea how any of that works, but I'm like, okay, just trust the movie. I'm not going to question.
I love that. I love that, because the whole thing about staying on the line long enough too hadn't been around long enough for it to be a trope yet.
Right.
So like I was immediately sold on that. Like, I believe that. And then you see him running through this weird engineering nightmare.
Yeah, it looks like he's in the bottom of like the Titanic or something. It's
Exactly.
Like, what is he looking for? I guess he's looking for one of them that's active. I don't know how it works.
But the thing is, if you believe this, it's so much easier to believe that.
Absolutely. And I have no problem with believing it. I'm like, oh, you literally have to run around looking for the exact one, and that's why it takes time. Because in other movies, they're like, we need you to stay on the phone for 2 minutes because that's how long it takes us to trace the call. And then in like other movies, it's just them like a line moving across the computer.
Exactly.
You're like, okay, I guess that's how that works. But
this guy was almost doing like a pratfall.
Yeah, he's like sprinting around and like sliding, like, oh fuck, was that it? I don't know.
It was great.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah. Before we get to that, though, there's the hockey rink segment where Jess goes there to see if Chris, the boyfriend, knew anything about where Claire had been or gone, and he hasn't seen her, and the police don't take that seriously. So we also learned that here's what I wrote: Peter plays experimental bullshit. That sounds terrible. It's probably going to end up the background track for a killing spree later, which is interesting that I said that in my notes, because you said after he destroys the piano, the stings are kind of like piano sounds.
Yeah, they sound like the interior of the piano when he's smashing it, is what I'm saying. What I said. But I think that like he probably had another piece prepared for those people that he was going to play. And this is probably some other piece that he was working on in secret, that he was like, I'm going to play this one because he's so fucked up from finding out that his potential baby is going to be aborted, that he's now playing this other thing that means something different to him. And it's like, I think it's supposed to be like this sort of like implosion within himself, where he's like, I'm not going to play the piece that I've been working on and practicing for 4 days. I'm going to play this other piece. Yeah, there's no way for me to prove that, but that's what I'm like, it's probably just supposed to be representative of like the crazy emotions he's going through.
Well, no, I think you've got something there, because it is experimental. And let me know if this sounds absolutely ridiculous, but he is so sure of himself as a father without having any experience.
Yeah,
he is very much, we're having this baby. I don't care what you say. Everything is going to be fine. And then you get the recital or his audition or whatever it is, where he's so sure of it. He's been doing it for days. He hasn't slept in, what he said, 3 nights. So like, he's so committed. He's got this nailed. He thinks that he is incredibly capable of doing whatever he wants. And he's falling apart, not just mentally, but in his
actual performance. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what they're going for. But like, at the same time, I hadn't really considered the aspect of him, like he's so certain of himself as a father, but also he's certain of himself as a performer and an artist. But like, people are able to like piece together what he's trying to do with his art, and he's not going to be able to piece together what to do with the father, because he's not able to hold on emotionally. Because then the next time we hear from him really is like, he again is pushing her and she's like no, and then the time we hear after that, he's completely fallen apart and can't put like 2 words together without like going into hysterical crying. So something tells me he's not going to be a great dad. He can't take breaks between his feverish manic piano sessions while he's practicing for days on sleeping.
Well, I think this is the perfect example of how hopeless everything in this movie is. Like even the people that have been practicing and who are trained and who know what they're doing can't keep it together. The people who are thrown into this cacophony of emotion and fear and terror, they're not going to do any better.
Yeah.
And I really think this is where we start to see it. And I think it's a fault of the movie that it's with him and not with Jess or with one of the other sorority sisters, because he's like a tertiary character. So giving him the authority to make the audience realize that we're not going anywhere good not only is an insult to the characters who we're supposed to care about, but it's an insult to the viewer because we can only identify with what he's going through.
Right.
It sounds dumb, but that's how I felt. That's exactly it. In a film where all of the main characters are women, we have to have the man who's falling apart be the guide to lead us to where we're going, which is nowhere good.
And we have to have a literal scene of him having a breakdown in order us to understand that. We have to show him with an ashtray brimmed with cigarette butts that he's been smoking for days on end, all over his grand piano. And then we have to show him destroy the piano, which is, again, the movie, I think that it's doing a little bit of lefting in the other direction where it's like, look, he's crazy. Look how crazy he is. He's the bad guy. And it's like, that's the movie just trying to be like, red herring, follow it down this hole.
I really wish he was.
It would make sense. Like there's not really a reason for him not to be, except that his mental breakdown happens after he finds out the information and the calls have been happening before that. That's the main thing for me where I'm like, well, it can't be him because there was already this maniac in the attic before he had his break. So that's one of those things where it's like the movie is trying to do that, but I already am fairly certain that it's not him, like before they've even gotten to that point. So it's one of those things where I'm like, there's probably a better way, or a better even a sequence of events that could have changed, like even just tweaked a little bit, and him being the killer would have been far less of feeling like a red herring. Where I'm like, they're obviously trying to lead me down this path. Imagine the scene of him destroying the piano was the first thing you see in the movie. That would change the entire dynamic of the movie. But then it also makes the entire movie about him, and I don't think that that's also positive. This movie is supposed to be about the House of Women, not about the piano playing douchebag.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're definitely right.
There's the dinner scene with the dad where Barb is wasted and looking at Playboy. She talks about a turtle that can have sex for up to 3 days. And she knows this because she went to the zoo and watched them and was very bored. And she also mentioned zebras who only copulate for 30 seconds. Barb thinks that Barb also thinks it's her fault that Claire went missing because she was talking smack to her. And then over to Peter, who simultaneously is smashing a piano, which we kind of already touched on. But I didn't realize that was the juxtaposition of like Barb realizing that it's her fault that Claire kind of stormed off. And then Peter freaking out. Jess and Chris go to talk to Claire's dad. They all leave and they're going to go to the search party that's looking for Claire. But through that, they end up finding the little girl. Back at the sorority home, there's the stalker. He's stalking around. Mrs. Mack is in a good mood. She's packing up to go away for Christmas. She drinks more sherry. We see Claire is still there in the attic. And the cat licks the corpse, which causes the rocking chair she's in to start moving. And this causes Miss Mack to hear that and go looking for the cat. She finds Claire and gets a hook to the head for her trouble by the kill man.
The moaner
boner. And then there's kind of like an unsettling scene where the cab driver comes to the door to be like, your ride's here. And then it shows the attic it shows the car drive away, and then like a reverse shot shows the attic window with Claire's face in the window, which is wild to me. It's wild to me that she's like visible from the street in the window, and then also they never once check the attic once.
Yeah,
never a single time.
I mean, they don't have a reason.
That problematic the whole time.
They don't have a reason to check the attic. Why would they check the attic? They just think she left. They don't think she's in the house.
I guess, but like, if you're gonna put together a search party, check all the rooms of the house first.
Exactly.
Maybe she's trapped under a,
Okay,
beam.
I'll give you, once they find the dead girl, then they're like, we should probably check the house. But like, if they've said we've looked everywhere in the house, then the cops are gonna be like, well, she's probably not in the house, and she was supposed to have left. So like, I understand the logic as to why they have it. Also, it was the 70s. Nobody knew what the fuck they were doing yet.
But she's visible from the street.
I mean, true, I guess, but like, it's an attic full of a bunch of junk and like dress forms and bird cages. You don't know that that's it's a bag on the head. You don't know. You can't tell what it is from that.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. And like, I guess we can't make Billy's choices rational, but I always found it weird that if you're going to kill somebody, don't put them in front of a window.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying too.
Yeah.
He also is insane.
Billy freaks the
that's what I'm saying.
after he kills. After he kills Mrs. Mack, he does thrash all around and freak out, which, this is a mentally unstable, to say the least, person. But yeah, we show the search party. They're all freezing. They find something, but it doesn't show it at first. Jess returns to the house, and the moaner's like freaking out in there, or he calls and is freaking out. He's saying help to her and weird shit like that. And I know what you did, Billy, he says on the phone as well. Which is also unsettling.
I think they're doing like a psycho thing, right? Where it's like he's multiple people. He embodies more than one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice they don't have to explain it. They just let the character be themselves.
And I don't think it really would have added much for me if they explained what's going on with this guy, because I don't think it matters, right? Like, I think it's just like crazy person in attic. That's all you really need to know, and that's fine.
I think it would have taken away from the effect of the film if they tried to explain too much.
Absolutely. And I think, and especially because the movie is more so about Jess and what she's going through and her weirdo boyfriend. I think that there's so many characters already existing, and we have enough information about all of them to kind of know who they are. I think there's a few that I maybe would have liked to have known a little bit more about, but at the same time, the stuff that we are dealing with in terms of Jess, it's like, it is a very heavy topic that it requires a lot of like emotional maturity to process when you're thinking about it and being like, okay, I understand what's going on with her. And if you're throwing a bunch of other stuff at us with other characters, it would probably unbalance the boat a little bit.
Yeah.
Jess calls the police about the calls, and this is where I wrote, "Oh, is Peter not the lurker?" But yeah, like the lurker is like lurking around the house. We get his POV shots. It'll be like something happening, and then cut to him doing a POV shot, and then cut to like the next thing happening, like several times throughout the film.
I was trying to figure out which lens they were using for those POV shots, because they're kind of good. Like it almost felt like a very mild fisheye lens, or like an anamorphic lens or something. Like I wasn't entirely certain what they were using, but it didn't seem like it was what they were using for the rest of the shots. But I liked the way it looked.
Yeah, definitely better than Tammy and the T-Rex, which I haven't seen yet, and we cover next week.
Yep.
Timelines. We find out from the police side, who is getting the call from Jess, that the park... Oh, sorry. Let me just rephrase that in a sentence that makes sense, because I don't know what the fuck that was. We find out it was a kid in the park, and it was the kid that was missing. And Jess relays this info to Peter. Peter says he's leaving the conservatory. He wants to marry Jess. Jess reminds him about him wanting to be a famous concert pianist. It's his greatest dream. And she also has dreams, because she seems like the type to be like, she wants to like finish university and have a career. Like she feels very like, very contemporary modern woman. Like she's very assertive and a very good character. I think that she's well-rounded in this universe. I think all the women of the sorority are very well-rounded. people. In fact, I think Claire might, if Claire doesn't get killed right at the start, I think she might have turned out to be kind of the one that's like, what are you talking about? She seems,
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I feel like most of them are just kind of, they seem like paper cutouts to me. Like they don't have any dimension to them other than like, I'm from New York and I got a potty mouth and I'm drunk all the time. Like that's not really a well-rounded character to me.
But I think Barb is much more of an interesting character than Jess. I think if you take the baby storyline away from Jess, she's one of the most uninteresting characters in the entire film.
I thought Barb was final girl for most of the movie until I was watching her get murdered because she's so big. She's such a big character. And I thought
she has things that make her interesting, but she's taken away from us before we get to really understand who she is. Yeah. We don't know anything about her except that she is upset that they are all blaming her for the death of their friend, but none of them are actually blaming her. She's kind of creating that scenario in her mind. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, she's got all the comedic relief at the beginning. What I mean to say is that like Jess, we don't really get a lot of information from her. It's almost all through the acting that we're given, right? Where it's like, you're feeling these emotions and we're feeling the emotions with her, but we don't really know much about her. She doesn't actually ever say anything as to what her plans are, what she wants. The assumptions that are made are that like she is at university, so we assume that she is trying to finish her post-secondary education in some capacity. So asking somebody to be like, you need now to put that on hold and spend the next 10 years of your life raising a child to a point in which you can come back and then finish that schooling later, which is like unfair, right? That's
definitely
that to a person.
Definitely.
So she has every right to not want to have a baby, and Peter is a selfish prick, and he keeps calling her a selfish prick, and it's like, no, Peter, you're the one who's throwing tantrums and destroying pianos, bro.
You have a comic amount of lack of self-awareness for. I really like your.
There's a point later, like
Steve, that he had this piece of music he was going to do that probably would have gotten him the pass, and then he had to go his own way and play this fucking nonsense.
Yeah, his jazz piano. But he decided like jazz. There's a point later on where she's talking to what the fuck's his name? What's the character's name? The sheriff, Lieutenant Ken Fuller.
Yeah.
He's like, is he neurotic in any way? And she's like, not really, not like more than anybody else. And she's like, well, does he ever act like this before? And she's like, well, he's an artist. He's very, kind of crazy. Like he's a crazy artist, basically.
So he's the killer is what you're trying to tell me right now. Like, well, no, I wouldn't quite say that.
And the cop is like, I see. Yeah, I need him to come talk to me.
The lieutenant is very much like that the whole time. I
think I need to talk to him. And so he goes. He goes, and this is when the cops now start to think that he's the killer as well, is because he goes to find him. Because she's like, when he gets upset like this, he goes to the recital hall and starts fucking jamming out on his piano. So he goes to check that out. But I think I'm jumping ahead a little bit. This is the part where he comes and taps all the phones and stuff. And
this is right before all of that stuff. This is the part where the police officers, the lieutenant kind of lays everything out. There's the girl in the park. There's Clare missing. There's the obscene calls. So they have to actually launch an investigation for real. And the lieutenant finds the sheet that had fellatio written on it too. And there's that funny moment where like Nash is like, yeah, I'm just an idiot. Okay. Don't worry about it. And one of the other cops is just like laughing like Beavis and Butthead about it, which I also was like, what a weird, in the midst of all this, they're still trying to give us a little bit of like weird levity that doesn't, this one stuck out like a sore thumb, I thought. It felt very juvenile.
But they're laughing at him for being dumb. I don't think it's true. Like he's not laughing at the word fellatio. He's laughing at the fact that this other moron has never heard of the word fellatio.
No, yeah.
Thinks it's somebody's name.
Yeah, I totally get that. But yeah, Peter's crashing out over the abortion and getting denied. He forbids her, and she kicks him out. Peter threatens her. It's like, you'll see. And the whole crew gets back at that moment as he's rushing out the door and slams the door. So the lieutenant's going to this movie becomes the television show The Wire. He's going to put a tap on the phone and wants to see Claire's room. The lieutenant asks about the last time and who saw her last. Basically, the wiretap guy is there setting up, and there's a guy in the car outside monitoring. They've got a police monitor. Peter's also lurking outside, and then they also show the lurker. So this is where I was like, how are they the same guy?
They're not.
Yeah. No.
Well, at this point, I'm still not really sure. I'm still like, is Peter the killer? But how's he in the house all the time? Because the movie, I feel like, is trying to push that, especially with him starting to go rogue a little bit.
It is weird. It's I was getting to a point where I'm like, is there going to be a part where Peter and the killer have to face off? And I'm like, I hate this Peter guy, but maybe he'll finally make like a true heroic sacrifice and not be a dweeb who's trying to push around his significant other, who she is now like, I don't want to marry you. You're fucking crazy and you're an asshole and you're trying to force me to have a baby. You can get fucked. And then he runs away. Yeah, and then we get the phone taps, and then this is where the movie becomes, now it's like, now there's technology involved, and they're a little bit safer, and there's probably going to be some interesting stuff going on. And there is, to a certain degree, like we were talking about earlier. I like whenever they get a phone call and the man is running around the fucking telephone bank operator station or whatever. I don't know I don't even know what you would call it, but he's running around.
What I imagine it's like back when phones were first existed, you had a literal operator like unplugging or replugging, on a board. So I think that this
hello, operator, get me the pie store downtown, quick, please. I'm in a hurry. I need pie now.
You could in our lifetime, you could call talk to an operator, which is insane to me. Can you still do that?
No,
I hit 0 and
but it's probably all automated for the
automated. Yeah. But even at the beginning when Barb's on the phone with her mother and she can't hear because of the party happening on the mother's end of the line, she hangs up the phone, clicks the receiver, and talks to the operator saying, "I can't hear the other end of the line. Can you turn it up?
Yeah, can you fix that for me, please?"
Yeah,
that's crazy. What a wild time.
When things
what an
were
inconvenient and shitty time to live in.
Yeah.
Where you didn't have a volume button on your own phone. You had to call somebody to do it for you.
There were cowboys 60 years before that.
There are still cowboys, Jason.
Fair enough. Don't let the get a watch.
I think you meant outlaws.
Yeah.
There are still outlaws.
Yeah.
Called Americans.
Yeah. True. That it is Wild West there, kind of.
Yeah.
But Phyllis is zonked. She heads to bed. Barb's in bed from her turtle outburst, and it's just Jess alone with the phone. And the cops and the wiretap are sort of discussing the situation. They explain the wiretap thing again. It shows the POV killer mumbling with Clare in the attic. So I guess it's not Peter. Jess waits by the phone. Cops wait by the phone on the other end. POV man is lurking now, I think, but it may also be Peter. So I'm still not sure in my notes. POV guy seems to be in Barb's room. Barb wakes up from an asthma attack / nightmare, and she dreamed a stranger was in there. So what I fully imagine here is he's standing over her, and she is all wasted and opens her eyes, sees a person standing there, and then has a full-on asthma attack. And then Jess goes up hearing that. Barb goes back to sleep, and carolers show up, and there's carolers, and just watching the carolers, she's really into it. And the moaner creeps into Barb's room, and we get a shot from the movie poster, the one on your screen, I think, Steve.
That's where he's got a hook.
He's got a hook, but there's it just shows his one eye and his silhouette, which is a really cool thing. And he just stabs Barb repeatedly. And the carolers are singing, so Jess doesn't hear the commotion upstairs. And also later, it's did you hear that commotion? And it's kind of well, she keeps waking up and freaking out because she's drunk and
having a panic attack because
hysterical,
about some creepy man. Some guy moaning over her.
Talking about Agnes. But then like another woman comes to the kids and rushes the kids back into the car. So there must be a message sent out in the neighborhood that's like, get everybody inside, because it kind of felt that way. Get these kids in the car. Yeah.
She literally says a girl was found dead by the lake. You girls should get inside. It's dangerous. Also, your phone is ringing. And then she goes inside and they go, bye. Have a good night. Have a good night. I'm like, oh, Canadians are so polite.
Yeah. So they trace that call. The phone's ringing. Sounds like a woman crying this time and a freaky man, and she's saying Billy this time. But we're led to believe that it's one person sort of saying all this, or is it him killing Barb? Is this phone call?
I don't think it's actually. I think that no. The next one is when Phyllis is being killed. This is just, I think, him doing the voices because he's not killing anybody at that point.
He just stabbed Barb repeatedly at this point.
Yeah, she's dead already.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think he recites some of the murders that have happened over the phone.
He also verbatim recounts a conversation that Jess had with Peter. Peter mentions that the baby is like a wart or something, or Jess says that, and then that's what he says on the phone back to her. And then that's when she's like, wait a second, how could you know that? Peter's got to be the killer.
Because he's in the vents. Listening through the ventilation system.
Lieutenant Fuller calls. They didn't actually get the tap, unfortunately. So the creeper's creeping. It asks why she said, oh my God, asks about using more than one voice. Yeah.
Lieutenant Fuller asks these questions too. What do you fucking put down your notes, you crackhead?
Sorry, I'm a crackhead. He also asked about
Can't
Peter.
Read own notes. What do notes mean?
Sorry.
Lieutenant Fuller is asking about the conversation that she just had with Peter on the phone, and Peter is talking about a bunch of stuff, and he's like, you want to tell me about what's going on? And she reveals that she's pregnant to the lieutenant, which he's like, well, now I need to check this guy out because this could mean something. If you're getting these phone calls and you're having these troubles with him, he seems pretty distraught and weird. We already talked about this earlier when we're talking about how he's like, is he neurotic? She's like, well, he is a fucked up artist who broke a piano, maybe. So yeah, he then decides that he's going to go check out Peter. She tells him that he probably will be at the recital hall because that's where he goes when he's all twisted up inside his little boy feelings and can't figure out his emotions. He goes and thwacks the piano.
It's like when Batman goes and sits on top of a gargoyle or something, or Spider-Man sits on a gargoyle.
Yeah, exactly. Or when a child goes into their treehouse and reads comic books or some bullshit.
Yeah. There's also this funny part here where there's a commotion. So Lieutenant has to let Jess go, and there's just this like random thing where a police officer was on this farmer's land, I assume looking for the missing people, but he shot him with birdshot, which is like basic. It's a shotgun
salt,
full of salt, isn't it? Like in
I think so.
Kill Bill.
I think that's buckshot. I don't know. I've never shot a gun in my life. I'm gonna talk here like I know about fucking bullets.
I think it's the salt one because he's just fine. He's just bleeding a lot.
Yeah.
And these guys like, next time I'll stick it up your ass. And I was like,
sideways. He says sideways. Also, the other guy's like, yeah, and you're gonna pull every one of these pellets out of my ass with your teeth. Jeez, these guys got a real dynamic. Where's the movie about these two?
Yeah, they're forced to do a.
So apparently, birdshot is just a bunch of really small pellets.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. The blood spatter everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just an explosion of feathers.
Yeah. John Woo movie.
So this is when everything goes to shit because their plan of listening in on all the phone calls goes awry because he decides to leave to go talk to Peter instead of sending somebody else to go do it, or at least have somebody else watch the fucking phone. What the hell are you doing, Lieutenant Fuller? What happened to Chuckles, your partner?
this is also when it's like, oh, she was screaming before. She's just up there having nightmares. Just pay no mind to Barb in her room screaming all night. She does that.
The booze gives you the night terrors.
We see the lurker lurking again, and there's another call, but this time it's from Peter. Line tapper gets the tap. This is when I thought that there was going to be some like call is coming from inside the house moment, but there really isn't. It's just him crying on the line. But even this line is the wiretapper can't get to it because the call ends before he can get to it.
Yeah.
And Lieutenant reveals he was listening to this call, which I thought was funny. It's like, you were listening to that? It's like, yeah, I kind of have to listen to all the calls that come into your house now. And then he asks Jess about killing the baby. What does that mean? And she's like, well, I was going to have an abortion. And he's like, that's illegal.
He doesn't.
He's not actually. I know he doesn't say that, but his reaction to
he doesn't seem to have as big a reaction as you would think for a movie from 1974. His reaction is very stoic and even. He's just like, okay, well, when did you tell him about this? Like, he's more interested in like, how long has this man known this news? Because it sounds like you just told him like 5 minutes ago. And she's like, I told him today, and he's pretty upset, and he's trying to force me to have a baby. And he's like, this man sounds unhinged. Where can I find him? I need to talk to this guy.
Did you notice the shadow in the background on Jess's side? The lurker's just like in the room.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He tries to get more out of her about Peter. And he definitely suspects Peter, as you just said, Steve. And he was there when the call came earlier. And that's when
she confirms that, like, he's like, well, was Peter around you anytime any of these calls have been made? And she said, yeah, there was one earlier today and he was here when it happened, so it couldn't have been him. It can't be Peter. And he's like, well, I still need to talk to him because he sounds unhinged and he might kill you because you're being difficult about the pregnancy. Difficult? He's trying to force me to have a fucking baby. I don't want it. I don't want to do it.
He wants to leave his career, which he could easily just like try again later, like just do better next time. And he wants to drop my career also.
To do the test once.
We're both supposed to, like, I feel like she should be like, I could also have a baby and us both have our career.
This isn't even putting a career on pause. This is asking somebody to not ensure their future career to come to fruition.
Full trad wife situation.
Yeah.
You can
like, no, you're going to have a baby, and we're going to move to a cabin in the woods, and
I'll chop wood, and you bake bread, and
bake pies.
I'll play piano at night. Not piano though, because we can't afford one of those. It's just a piano.
That almost got me. That's funny. Not piano. Or not piano. Piano.
Smash the boys too.
Yeah. Just one night.
Yeah, he's like, God damn it, I'm no good at piano.
Yeah. Can't even play a simple rag. But the boys from the search party show up, basically trying to see if the girls are safe. You kind of already talked about that a little bit. They basically just make fun of them for being ugly and don't let them in the house, which fair play.
Yeah, they do a cheesy gag where they keep trying to close the door and the guy keeps pushing it open and saying the same shit but with different words over and over. And we're like, yeah, okay, get it. Got it. Funny. Okay, move on.
Also, this movie has a real problem with like characters almost discovering things. Like right here, Phyllis goes to like check on Barb, and she like walks in. I know what happens next, but she walks into the room. She's like, oh, she's asleep and is about to leave, but then the door slams shut. Like the killer gets her. But it did seem like, when they show Barb being murdered, she's smashing stuff. All the shit around her bed gets smashed. There's probably blood everywhere. And Phyllis is just like, she's asleep. She's fine. And then goes to leave. But yeah, the door closed and she looks freaked out. Like
these types of things don't bother me. Like these logical inconsistencies. I'm like, the whole movie is logically inconsistent. So it's dark in there. She can't fucking see it.
It's getting worse and worse too as the movie progresses.
Like, I don't fucking care, Like, who gives a shit? We did Tammy and the T-Rex last week, and Jason gave it 5 out of 5. Just kidding. We're doing it next week, and I predict he'll give it 5 out of 5.
I'm not going to give it 5 out of 5.
I didn't not going to do that in the future.
I think I'm going to give it like a 4 out of 5, which is too high. No, I think I'll give it a 3 out of 5 in the future.
I can't remember what you're going to give it.
Find out on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
It's our shortest episode ever. The lieutenant checks the conservatory for Peter. I really like the makeup of this scene. Like, he walks into this room, and in the foreground is a smashed piano, and he gets closer and closer to it to, like, I don't know. It did something for me.
That's a good shot. I like
yeah.
how it starts with like just the door opening and like the little small silhouetted version of him with like a massive ocean of black and then turning on the light. I like that kind of stuff. It's better than the movie when you see shots like that. There's actually a lot of nice shots in this movie, to be honest. The cinematography is pretty great.
I think for as illogical as it is, I think the scene of Claire in the top window and showing the house, I think is pretty iconic for this movie, because like logically, either you see it or like you said, Steven, like you wouldn't be able to see it from the street. I think just that shot looked really cool.
Yeah.
And I think
also, it's a small window. Even if you saw it, you would be like, is that a person up there? Oh, no, because it's got a big plastic bag on it. You just think it's a mannequin or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't assume corpse if I saw it right away, but you know.
We are very different people.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
the first thing I would think.
But I'm pretty sure that I've seen you assume everything's a corpse. You're like, oh my god, that garbage can, corpse. You wake up at night having an asthma attack, and you just assume everything around you's a corpse.
Everything's corpses. I'm a corpse. Am I a corpse?
Oh my god, corpse.
So Jess gets another call. Seems like Billy is doing the kill in the house. We see his POV. And I think this call might be him killing Phyllis, but I think he does. I think his thing is that he kills somebody and then calls the home.
Yeah.
And I do still stand by the first call was him killing the young girl.
Could be. We'll never know.
We'll never know. But the wiretap guy gets the tap. He broadcasts over the radio for the police. And guess what, guys? The calls are coming from inside the house.
Oh my god!
But he says the calls are coming from in the house or whatever. What was
the
house?
From
the house.
From
yeah.
the house.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The first call was after he killed the girl, because as he's like approaching the house, he's got blood on one of his hands.
Mm.
But the weird thing about that is when he calls, they're like, "Oh, it's him again."
Yeah.
So he's been calling for a while.
It's this schmuck.
Yeah. So who else has he killed then?
I mean, the little girl for sure, right? I mean,
they wouldn't have found the little girl if they didn't do a search party for Claire. I feel like it seemed because there's that scene of them looking shocked, and you're like, "We're going. That can't be Claire." But what is it? And then when it's revealed, that's when my brain started going, "Oh, this guy has been active for a while."
Yeah.
Also,
it would have been interesting if they're like, we found another corpse and he's just like been killing people all over the place, like directly toward the house.
Or if they go into the basement and there was just a stack of corpses in the basement already.
Oh, he's using their sorority house as a storage facility for all his kills. That would be
so was Jennings a police officer? Because there's this weird scene where the lieutenant's trying to call his guys and he calls Jennings and it just shows a guy dead with like
that's one of his undercover cops or whatever, like a plane.
Oh, was that the undercover cop in the car out front?
Yes.
Okay. So at some point POV killer just went over and was like,
or it was Peter.
Or it was Peter. No. Peter and his freak out.
Yeah, killed him with a piano wire.
But okay, so this part I thought was horrifying, but also objectively funny, where Lieutenant Fuller is like, "Okay, Nash, you have one job. You have to call Jess. Just say, don't let her ask any questions, and just say, just walk outside. That's all you have to do." He crumbles under the pressure almost immediately.
She's not listening to him, Jason.
Yeah, but he says the kill is in your house. Like moments later, he was onto something. He was like doing a pretty good job, but this Nash guy's a buffoon. I thought it was really funny. I was watching this scene genuinely like this is my favorite scene of the movie. This might be my Home Alone of it all. This
Yeah, but I mean, you kind of knew him, like, he's gonna fuck it up somehow. I thought it was gonna be an even worse blunder, where the first thing he was gonna say is like, "I don't want you to freak out, but there's a man in your house somewhere,"
and he is the
moaning
killer.
and groaning.
Everybody, because the first thing he asks is like, "Are you home alone?" And she goes, "No, they're upstairs." And then he's like, "Huh. Well, just walk outside. Don't ask any questions. Just walk outside.
Put the phone down and go out the front door and just keep walking and don't stop walking until you're in the forest." Yep. He fucks up and she doesn't listen, goes upstairs, finds the corpses of her 2 friends, and then the man is in the closet going, "It's me, the baby. I'm Billy. Woo,
Yep.
gaga." And he sees one creepy eyeball.
Yeah.
Which is when I'm like, it's absolutely not Peter. That's not Peter Eye. That ain't Peter Eye unless his eyes change when he turns into Billy. He morphs.
It was an interesting little, like, they put a special effect over his eye, it felt like, because it seemed like the iris was like 3D or something.
It just looked like
looked amazing. Contact. It looked absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I think he just looked like he had a contact into me that like made the outer rim of his eye look like gray, and then the interior of it look very vibrantly like brownish red.
But it's the most iconic shot of the film, I think.
Yeah,
iconic. EYE.
Yeah,
iconic.
I think that and the one from one of the movie posters where it's also his one eye. There's a lot of eye stuff. She grabs a fire poker and heads up to look around after Nash bumbles it. She finds both of them, Barb and Phil, mangled and dead. Billy emerges and Jess makes it to the cellar. He's just bashing his head against the door when she closes and locks it behind him. And we get that shot of like the police rushing there. So now there's like a ticking clock. We can see Billy in the window, and he's just a silhouette. But also, is that Peter? But it's not, because he's going like.
It'd be funny if he was licking the window, like.
Yeah.
Smashing it against that door, though, is horrific. It's so terrifying and so well done. Yeah.
The noises he's making, the noise the door is making, and the fact that she is like she's not doing what you would expect in most horror movies, which is to be shrieking uncontrollably. She's like, she's just like in shock, and she's almost completely silent and just shaking. And like the sort of like broken beam of light over her eyes, it's all very nicely shot, this whole sequence, really.
Yeah,
that was another scene I wanted to bring up. When she's there, it's shot like almost like a film noir for a second, with the light over the eyes and everything very like dim. But also when she's in the basement after the weird silhouette scene, Peter does show up, and he like is trying to like see through, and then eventually she's just like, she's mortified because it's coming from all angles at this point, and he smashes through the window, he kicks through it, and he calls out for her, but she just keeps hiding. And then when he spots her, she cowers, and he's like, "I was calling out for you. Why didn't you say anything?" But also, we know all of the horrific things that she's just been through. She's just seen all her friends die. She basically does that Halloween moment of she walks through the house and sees all the kills that happens in every Halloween movie. But the police arrive and bash in the door. They head to the cellar. They find Jess and Peter Peter hobbled over her sort of in a catatonic state. He's covered in blood. And I guess what I assume happened, is she fucking just maimed him and killed him.
She hit him with a fire poker.
Yeah.
It was Jess with the fire poker in the basement. That's how Peter died.
It's true. And she's knocked out. They're all in her room, and they do this interesting shot where everybody leaves one by one. It's almost stage theater style, where she's laying there in a catatonic state, knocked out. They're talking about her being like, well, she's going to be out for at least 4 hours, and then after that, she'll be in a zonked state. Claire's dad tries to get up. He, crumbles under the stress. They leave. The last cop leaves, turns off the light, and as the camera kind of pans out, I thought that Billy was going to like come into frame. So I was like, oh, Peter's the killer. But no, we get a pan to every room in the house where all these horrific tragedies have happened. And it eventually goes up to the attic where Mrs. Mack and Claire are still there. We hear Billy doing his Billy weirdness, and I guess Billy survived the whole situation, and he made everybody basically either die or kill each other. Jess is technically the final girl, but she's gonna be going to a lot of therapy, if not put into a.
I mean, I assume that he probably crawled out of the attic and killed her.
I think so too. Yeah. As soon as you hear the phone ring.
Is that the point of like them turning off the lights and everybody leaving the house thinking it's done?
I mean, again, these police are not the greatest at their jobs. They left her with one guard outside the house instead of, leaving somebody in the room with her or anything. But
yeah, I don't think anyone survives this story other than Billy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But Ben, I know you have to sort of get out of here soon. I kind of already talked about the beginning. At the beginning of the movie, I kind of talked about this end scene with the credits and just the phone ringing and the idiot police outside. So I love that theory. But we can probably go into our final thoughts and our home alone of it all and just wrap her up.
You had to pick one.
What do you think the Home Alone
when
of it
is
all?
the Home Alone of it all?
Can someone please tell me when the Home Alone of
I
it
really
all
gotta
happens?
know.
When is the Home Alone of it all?
What is the Home Alone of it all? Now that's the Home Alone of it all.
So Ben, I'm interested to hear what the home alone of it all is. It's of course in every film we've posited that the idea that when Kevin McAllister slaps down the blueprint and that third act of like them going through the murder house is sort of can be applied to other movies. Does this movie have one? And also, what is it for you? Also, we need your final thought, and if you have a rating, rate it.
Yeah. For me, I would say the Home Alone of it all hits you at the very beginning and they just carry it throughout the entire film to the very end. And that is the despair. No one's doing well. And it's this dark cloud that just sits over the film because nobody is really living their best life. Even the comedy that we get from like Mrs. Mack is really depressing when you look at it.
Yeah.
When you look at her character. So everyone's already like down a peg and then just keep getting knocked down further and further and further and further. And you're given like a moment of levity and then you get knocked down again. So it's like one step forward, 8 steps back. And then you just get slammed in the face with this depressing ending where they kind of give you that idea of like, well, like Jess is safe, the police are there, but then everyone's starting to leave. They haven't discovered the bodies in the attic. Billy's still around, and Jess is unconscious in her room, and the phone rings. Movie's over. It's so depressing and so dark. It's so mean, and that starts from the beginning and just gets worse throughout the rest of the film. And it's not an accident. Like that is the intention of the film, in my opinion, and that it grabs you by the throat and just slowly strangles you harder and harder as the movie goes on. So I really think that's like the overlying theme of the movie is just we're not doing well and no one's going to get out of this alive. As far as final thoughts on the movie, I had said I'd seen this movie numerous times before and I just didn't care. I couldn't think of characters' names. This time, completely different. I really appreciated what I saw. I really appreciated the conversation about it. And this is definitely something I'm going to revisit again because the way we talked about it and the things you two brought up, ideas I'd never really considered, but make the movie so much more enjoyable. So maybe I've been watching it knowing I didn't like it or thinking I didn't like it. So I just inevitably didn't like it again.
Right.
But there is a lot to appreciate about this movie, and I'm definitely looking at it in a completely different way now. And I think it's actually quite good, and would definitely recommend. When it comes to a rating, I'd give it 5 rotary spins out of 5 now.
What? So many spins.
so many spins. Steve, how about you, buddy?
Home Alone of it all for me is probably I don't know. It's kind of hard because it just feels like tonally the movie is sort of stagnant throughout. It's like you say, it's dreary, drab, depressing, and bleak throughout its entirety. And there's those little sparkles of comedy we get just to sort of lift us up for a moment to be like, oh my God, someone just got a bag on the head. Yeah. Oh my God, someone just got a hook in the head. So it's difficult to pick one, but I guess if I'm just gonna pick my favorite moment, I think it is when he's destroying the piano, because I'm like, all right, so this is where things are probably going to pick up and become more interesting. I don't know if it necessarily does, but I think everything that comes after the destruction of the piano is when I become a little bit more invested in everything. I like the stuff with the police. I like the stuff with Jess and Peter, and like their dynamic being this sort of like really dark, depressing, uncomfortable conversation that they're not even really allowing each other to have a conversation between the two of them. They're both giving their perspective and their opinion and their decision without actually having a conversation between the two of them and talking about it, which makes it really depressing and at times difficult to watch. But I think it's probably the most interesting stuff in the movie. Love a good running through a warehouse full of a bunch of technology that I don't understand. I don't care to understand it. I like it. I like the way it looks. I like the way it sounds. And I like how disappointed he is every time he doesn't trace that call. Like, God damn it. I was this close. I was so close to catching that number, that last number. Yeah, I mean, I think that this movie, the fact that it predates Halloween and the fact that it has so many templates and contributes to a lot of blueprints of movies that are to come after it, I think it deserves a place in sort of like the pantheon of horror movies, and it has its place of importance in like the Hall of History when it comes to horror movies as an entire genre. You can see lots of other movies are inspired by this, and the fact that, you know, the poster line for this, I don't think it was actually on the poster, but the poster line that I've decided to call it that, the call is coming from the house, is like something that everybody knows. You can say that to almost anybody in any situation. It's now become like a diss that you say to people, like to burn people or whatever, where it's like when somebody is like super homophobic, you go, the call's coming from inside the house, to be like, yeah, you're fucking dumb. That comes from this movie. I am interested to know if that was an urban legend or something before this movie, and this movie just used it as their
it is. It's this movie's based on an urban legend. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, are you certain of that, or are you just saying that?
Yeah, no, I talked about it in the production talk and in the like earlier.
Yeah, I'm just like, how much before this movie came out was that urban legend around for?
Urban legend, it's called like The Killer and the Babysitter or something like that. And the idea is that the killer's inside the house while the babysitter's babysitting.
No, I've heard that urban legend before. Like that's even been on like Freaky Stories and stuff, where there's like the dog licking your hand or whatever. Like the dog is licking your hand, and then the guy's like, I was licking your hand because I'm crazy. Anyway. My point being, I wonder like the specific, like the phone call coming from inside the house, if that's this or if that predates it, or if it's just that sort of like the killer in the house thing is what they got their juice from. Anyway, I think it's enjoyable. I think it stands the test of time. I think that it is something that me and my friends will continue to revisit around the holiday season because we love watching weird Christmas horror movies. But if I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it a moan and a groan on the phone.
This week, my stuff is pretty short and sweet because Ben kind of said my Home Alone of it all, this whole movie. The fact that you get the lurker at the very beginning and he starts making moves right at the start, there isn't really a certain like point. If anything, it's like the third act is the Home Alone of it all in this, because it becomes a hard slasher. Like it becomes a ticking time bomb of horror. Like it starts happening, keeps happening, and then the really depressing ending is chef's kiss. My final thoughts are like it's slow and plodding, but it's like What?
Nothing. I was just saying, like, we should stop saying chef's kiss and just start saying chef's piss when we don't like something.
Yeah. This is chef's fingers, not chef's piss.
Okay.
What's up, Cass? The final thought element you guys kind of already touched on. It's like a slow kind of plotting movie, but like it makes sense in the context of what it is. It's a very 70s movie. It's a very 70s horror movie. And it can be a little boring at times, but that in retrospect doesn't take away from the movie. Just while you're in it, you're kind of like get to the next thing. But it is what it is. It's an old movie. I'm sure the remakes stomp all over the slowness of it and try to make it into some next like modern stuff always happening kind of a movie.
Yeah, I've never
I'm
seen
sure I'll
remakes, but I think there's two.
There's two. And that's what I'm saying. Like this movie probably gets resurrected every 20 years so they can make that $4 million again.
Retain the license or whatever. Like we need to
yeah. But if I was to give it a rating, I give it a 4 out of 5 overall. But I give it a hook that is not a crook. And even though Miss Mac is no, that's never mind any of that. I give it 5 sherry bottles out of 5.
There we go.
A hook that is not a crook. That's also my rating for the movie. All right. Well, with that, we're gonna get out of here in just a moment, but we have to do some plugs. So plug it in.
All right, let me just plug this in right here and
He's dead. Ben, what do you got? What are you working on? What do you got going on? What are you doing?
Just sticking it with BS Bargain Bin right now. Trying to get episodes as frequently as possible, but you know there are delays time to time. It is Christmas season, so things have been slowing down a bit. But we've got our next episode on Clue coming up soon. You can find that on YouTube, on Spotify, any podcatcher really. And it's me and Sandro having a blast, just shooting the shit about movies that we think need to be talked about, and this time it's one that neither of us have seen before. So
it sounds familiar. That's saying to Sandra the other night that we accidentally started the same podcast at the same time.
Yeah,
one of them was just triple the length of yours. I won't say which one. Steve, what do you got cooking on the back burner, friend?
Well, I always like to plug Stanland. It's been out for a while now, but you can find it on the Sonar Network as well as a bunch of other podcasts, wherever you get podcasts, basically. I also am working on a new thing for the Sonar Network and the same writer as Stanland, which is called Randy, which is going to be 11 episodes, and it's basically like a self-produced audio memoir of a 30-something from Maryland found by Mike Sachs as CDs at a garage sale and being broadcast for the first time as is. It's kind of a fun show just based around this one weird man named Randy and his interactions with the world. But it's charming and funny and goofy, and I'm doing some edits for that. It's something that was recorded quite a while ago, so I'm just going through and dusting some corners and clipping some things that maybe don't age too well, and updating some stuff to polish it up for the new age that we live in. And then also Darth Theorist, Star Wars YouTube channel, and the Three-Eyed Theorist, a Game of Thrones YouTube channel, where I narrate a bunch of things in a voice like this and talk and do a bunch of character voices, and it's just a bunch of fun stories in those two worlds. And we have a third page coming soon, but I'll let you guys know about that when it drops.
Was it called the Barf Theorist?
It's called Barf Theorist, and it's just me going for 45 minutes.
Hell yeah, that's what the people want. I called it. I just put if that link doesn't work, it's if you just look at BS Bargain Bin. I just looked it up, and you can find their latest episode is Jason X. We'll be covering that in October on this very show. And speaking of this show is called Hey, Did You See This One? You can find it each and every week right here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. typically what happens is we record the episode, then I take that episode and I make an audio version and a video on demand version. Those usually go up over the weekend. Yeah, and we're finishing up our Christmas month. It's been a very good year. I'd like to thank everybody who came through and watched. We had crazy growth this year. We're moments away from getting the first level of monetization on YouTube. We've seen several hundred new subscribers on YouTube. It's been awesome. I really appreciate everybody who comes through and listens to this because it's a very special show to me, and I get to talk to all my greatest friends each and every week right here. We also have merch for the show. You saw it earlier, the Howie Mandela effect. You can get that on a shirt. You can also get shirts of Corporal Tunnel Syndrome from our James Bond month, the Grimoire Familiar Killers. Speaking of which, you can get the Killade himself right on a shirt. We also have the Eldritch Millennial and Twinkerbell, 2 classics. You can also find me. I'm the voice of Super Kicked Wrestling here in Toronto. We have a show coming up on, I believe, January 28th. I wasn't able to make the 10th anniversary, but that did just come and go, and it was a great show. All the best to all of the wrestlers that performed on that, and I can't wait to see what we do in 2026 for that as well. And then I guess on top of that, here's a picture of Santa because it is Christmas.
Oh, baby.
Is he just picking his nose? Is he smoking a cigar? We've been asking ourselves all month what's going on. I feel like I had something else that I needed to promote, but oh yes, I remember. So speaking of Sandro on the BS Bargain Bin podcast on January 12th, and also speaking of Super Kicked, I took part in an interview for my wrestling career on the what's that show called? Internet Wrestling Profiles? Is that what it is?
I don't know.
I look to you. It's a wrestling profile interview channel. I'll link it when we get closer. But January 12th is when my episode goes up, and it was a very good conversation. Sandro is a podcaster at his core, and he's very good at interviewing. So look out for that coming up soon. But with that, there is one question that needs to be asked each and every week. Ben, you know what to do.
Hey, did you see this one?
What do you get if you combine a sorority with a murdering killer?
I don't know.
Neither do I, but it's gonna shock you and terrorize you. Get it?
Yeah.
You get it?
That's terrible.
You get it?
Beam up some Star Trek content with Live Long and Podcast. A roundtable movie discussion with Hey, did you see this one? And take a peek into the darkness with Heard Noise. Must Investigate with Michael Chan. Watch us duke it out on trivial debates. And let's chat about TV with the Super Mater Brothers. It's all here on the United Federation of Podcasts.